Number two, targeting the right fans, right? That's where we are looking at different groups of people or different segments of people, because people all have different interests. So we need to tell the correct story to the correct fan itself. Lastly, is really about enhancing our delivery. So this is where we have started to adopt more technology. We have started to go into different platforms to enhance our delivery and make sure that the Indian traveler has a seamless experience while in Singapore. Telling a great Singapore story. So we talked about the whole brand review earlier. Srita had gone through with you how we had developed this particular brand. Then we also talked about the whole Singapore story of how we came about as a nation. And now we go into this global brand campaign, whereby we have launched it in Singapore on August 24th. And today we are launching it here in India itself. And in other countries, they have also been launched as the days go by. Last but not least, the content-led storytelling. Once again, I emphasize on that whole storytelling element. This is the part that we feel would resonate with a new batch of Indian travelers. Because we feel that stories actually connect. People don't remember facts, they remember stories. So telling our story at the right time itself, this is the part whereby we talked about going into the passive stage. Even before someone is thinking about going for a holiday itself, we want to seed ideas of Singapore into his or her mind, right? So that's where day to day we are actually featuring some of these stories. We are making sure that whatever they're doing, for example, they have a sudden idea about Singapore. Or perhaps it's about they're craving for food. Perhaps it's a craving for, let's say, for example, a new shoe from Charles & Keith, for example. So I think there's a lot of passive stage engagement that we are doing from our side. And of course, not to forget, the active stage is also important for us as well. That's where the planning and booking, and that's where we work with the travel trade intermediaries over here in India to develop this, to bring across this message and activate it and do conversions for the Indian traveler itself. So based on research itself, the MEC research, 47% of people have a strong idea of which brand they buy before the need to purchase is triggered. So this clearly demonstrates that we need to have more engagement at the passive stage, seed ideas into the Indian travelers, give them opportunities to think about Singapore. And that's the only way that we can actually increase the mind share of Singapore at the passive stage itself. So what is the great Singapore story? This is really the story of our people, right? The people that we have featured. We talked about Malcolm Lee, the Michelin star, the chef owner of the first Michelin star Peranakan restaurant in the world. We're also going to talk about a few other people, for example, Subaraj, which I'll highlight later as well. It's also about our can-do spirit. From a small country, we have developed into a bustling metropolis. We have a diverse but harmonious community and culture. And it's also about our never settling attitude. We want to make sure that we bring the best to all the things that we do. So this is where some of the Singapore stories comes about. All right? The story, there is no place like this other than in Singapore. We recognize the achievement of our big heroes, Joseph Schooling, the first Olympic champion from Singapore itself for swimming. And then we also recognize the everyday stories of our locals, right? This is an ordinary auntie who's working in a food culinary business, but he or she delivers good culinary experience to Singaporeans and also to tourists and visitors alike as well. So that's why we want to recognize some of these everyday stories of the locals. Our people and their stories best convey the spirit and the attitude of this place, and that's the reason why we continue to emphasize there is no place like this. Singapore, passion made possible. We also have a lot of research that we have done as well, whereby we got it from both qualitative and also quantitative research. Many tourists now want to live like locals, right? And I believe the Indian traveler is also the same as well. They don't just want to tick off a bucket list to say, oh, I've been to Gardens by the Bay, I've been to Universal Studios. But I think they also want to say, hey, at Gardens by the Bay, I actually talked to the gardener who's actually tending to the flowers every day. And I found out that there's a new species of plants that is extinct every moment. So I think there's a lot of storytelling going on, and this is the kind of message that we want to put across as well. These travelers want to be transformed by their trip. They don't want to come back from the trip and just say that, oh, I've been to Singapore, that's it. They want to say, I've been to Singapore, I've experienced the local cuisine such as laksa, for example. I've gone to a local festival whereby it's not found here in India. I've gone to experience, I've gone to buy a certain designer, local designer shoe or something like that. So there's actually a shift in our marketing approach. Previously, it was very transactional, all right? What visitors can do in Singapore. So you have an itinerary that states, day 1, go to the zoo, day 2, night safari, day 3, Gardens by the Bay. But I think as we move further along, Indian travelers want a much more aspirational kind of marketing approach, right? What visitors can be in Singapore, all right? So if, let's say, for example, there was a foodie from India, he or she wanted to say, hey, I enjoy eating laksa, right? But I want to find out how to cook it so I can actually bring it back to India and share with my family and friends. That's where he joins a cooking class in Singapore, and that is what I mean by what visitors can be in Singapore, right? So going beyond telling travelers what they can do in Singapore, as I mentioned earlier, we have identified a few different categories of interests and passions that the Indian travelers can look at. So we have, of course, the food and dining. Food is obviously a very big thing here in India. Shopping and retail, all right? I believe Indian travelers still enjoy the good old bargains, the good old finds of new souvenir items for their friends and families. Then there's also sightseeing and attractions. The Indian travelers want to see a lot of new things that they might not have been able to experience elsewhere. Right? And last but not least, we also have business events, which is much more for the BTMI's visitors. And then of course we have other categories which will be coming out soon as well, which is the sports and adventure, arts and culture, nightlife and entertainment. So what you can do in Singapore. This is where all these categories form what we call passion tribes. What does it mean? All right? It means bringing together like-minded people who have similar passions. So if you are a foodie, you might be perhaps going with a group of friends that enjoy eating different kinds of culinary experiences, and when you go over to a certain country, you want to try the range of cuisines available. So it's not just about eating the same old Indian food, for example. You want to try perhaps Peranakan food. You want to try some Chinese noodles. You want to try some desserts which are not available here. So I think this is where the foodie passion, for example, is amplified by these passion tribes. So we will target the passions of our consumers, and we will appeal to their aspirations where Singapore's many possibilities can feed these passions. So 7 passion tribes, which is basically what I shared earlier as well, right? The foodie, collector, explorer. Then we also have the progressor tribe, which is for the BTMI's category of travelers. And then of course we have the action seeker, culture shaper, as well as the socializer. So based on these 7 passion tribes, we feel that we have more or less covered a fair range of the types of different Indian travelers. And I believe that the Indian travelers would be able to plug and play into some of these different tribes itself. In fact, some of them might be from 2 different tribes. They could be from a foodie and as well as a collector tribe as well. So I'm just going to highlight a little bit about this chef Malcolm Lee, which was highlighted earlier as well. He had mentioned about how he loved the shophouses in Katong and Joo Chiat, which is a neighborhood in Singapore that has a lot of shophouses in the Peranakan heritage and culture. And all these little intricate touches on the wall and the staircase, they really help me understand how Peranakan food should be. So it helps him develop his passion as a person through the surroundings in Singapore, through the neighborhoods of Katong and Joo Chiat. I will play the foodies video, which will then give you an idea of what kind of messaging we are throwing